Let's get into the crux of this podcast then, and that's Jurgen Klopp and his Liverpool future, which seems a bit weird to say, even that sentence, considering how well he's done at Anfield over the time. But it was actually Klopp that brought this to the fore, really, Rafa, on Monday in his press conference. I was there, and it was one of those answers where you're sort of looking down at your notepad, taking the notes. He starts talking about his own future, and you look up, and is he really talking about this? But what did you make of all the answers that he gave on his future, unprompted at the start of the press conference?
Well, I mean, you'd know better than me, but from the quotes that I read, it seemed to stem from a conversation about the managers who got fired.
Yes.
And as he was talking, he probably realized, there's one guy who hasn't been fired this season, and that's me. And I think just that quip and just that line probably just amused him enough to make that a subject. I don't think he was trying to send a very important message one way or the other. I think he was just stating the fact that he's still there. And if you want, kind of intimating that other clubs with other owners might have pulled the trigger at that point and wouldn't have tolerated such a bad season. I mean, at Bayern, for example, where they just fired Julian Nagelsmann, and he would have been very familiar with the situation. Nagelsmann was in second spot, quarterfinals of the Champions League, quarterfinals of the German Cup, 1 point behind Dortmund, and he gets the sack because Bayern feel the season is not really going where it should be going. By those standards, Klopp wouldn't have just been sacked this season, but probably a couple of seasons before as well. But things are different, and they're largely different because of Klopp having done things that perhaps have raised the club to a level where he's now trying to keep up with his own expectations rather than the club's. And he, of course, has owners who believe in him and who have basically made him, to a large extent, the club itself. Klopp and Liverpool are sort of indistinguishable, and it's a different dynamic. So I don't think he wanted to open his conversation about what's happening to him, where he's going, what's he planning to do. I don't think he wants to discuss this publicly. I think he was just basically saying things are different. And in one way, he's making a compliment to Liverpool, saying people are more realistic here and patient, and they understand that sometimes you have a bad season. And at the same time, of course, he was making the point that, he's outstayed almost everyone in this league, or is it everyone by this stage? He must probably the longest serving manager in the league, if I'm not mistaken.
Third longest in the Football League. That's how long he's been at Liverpool for. Not that means much these days, because
no.
Managers aren't staying there very long anywhere,
but
are they?
Just to make the point, I think that things are a little bit different.
What was the local sort of fans' reaction to it, Caoimhe, that you saw?
I think they took it as a joke and sort of laughed it off as well. I mean, Jurgen Klopp, he's been at Liverpool 8 years now this year, so obviously fans are quite sort of in on his jokes and how he sort of words things. So sometimes, I think they took that. I think, if he's here in a couple of years' time, approaching his decade at Liverpool, then, he'll be singing Elton John's I'm Still Standing, won't he, rather than Last Man Standing. And it does feel like he does that at times, just makes those little jokes. And I think it was a sort of making a point as well that, FSG have been patient with him. I think he said that last night after the game too, in terms of, the pressure has been on Liverpool this season and will remain on Liverpool. But in terms of, singularly sort of focusing on Klopp, it hasn't really been there. And I don't think it will be this season. I mean, if this sort of slide continues and, we're deep into next season and Liverpool are playing the same kind of football that, Jurgen Klopp said himself he couldn't understand watching them at the Etihad, which is, must be baffling and perplexing for him to watch a team, and he's been telling them, for these tactical tweaks and to do this and that, and he's watching them and they don't look like the team that he's been, talking to and training and working with for so long.
And this is where the parallels with Dortmund become interesting, because to a lot of people in Germany with a cursory glance, it's like, oh yeah, we've seen this before. The team can't take it anymore. It's too intense. He's sort of squeezed them like a lemon, and that's just it. I think he's aware of these problems and possibilities that maybe he's asking a lot of this team. Unlike at Dortmund, though, he's in a position a little bit like Ferguson was, he doesn't have to adjust to the team. If the team can't no longer do it, he'll just change the team. And I think we see now a season where half the team has changed, or let's say a third, but it's not quite enough. I think they need more wholesale changes. I think he realized it. I think he didn't probably appreciate that somebody like Fabinho would have such a poor season as a key player, which then exacerbates problems in midfield, which perhaps weren't so acute with Fabinho solving so many of those problems before. And suddenly the midfield looks very old and creaky and weak. And of course, without that midfield, Liverpool can't function, because this midfield is very different to City's midfield in terms of what they do with the ball, but they are the kind of the key conduit to both the aggression going forward and being able to do enough to protect the back four. And because that section of the team isn't functioning properly, everything else looks quite labored and looks a little bit slow and looks a little bit sloppy. And it all comes down to that, I think. But he is luckily in a position where he says, okay, if this doesn't work anymore, if these players can't do it anymore, I don't have to change my ideas. I don't have to change my system. The club don't have to change manager. I'm just going to change the team. And I think that's where the success will come again for Liverpool, by just freshening things up.
Jamie Carragher made exactly the same point after the match last night, that things need to change in terms of the personnel at Liverpool to get back to playing how they used to play effectively, because he was sort of making the point that at City and against Chelsea, Liverpool were being asked to play the same way as they were previously, yet the players now can't do it, whatever that reason might be. Caoimhe, how much do you think Jurgen Klopp is to blame for Liverpool's problems? Because we pointed the finger at the midfield, like we're just doing now, actually, at Mohamed Salah's drop-off, at Virgil van Dijk's issues. How much of it is Klopp?
I think he own up and collectively, take on some of, the blame, I think, this season as well. And he has done. At times he sort of defended his players from that and said, point your finger at me. But no one really has, and that's because he's got so much credit in the bank, and he will, remain at Liverpool, and, fans absolutely adore him. I think there was a point in the season, I can't remember when it was not long ago, might have been the start of January, when Liverpool just were losing games for fun. And there was sort of a moment when everyone sort of gone, is Klopp under pressure? And we sort of all started asking each other and looking around, and is Klopp under pressure? That kind of thing. And no, he's not, was pretty much the answer. And I think there was sort of a bit of a thing on social media where, that question was being asked a little bit by some people. And then, straight away, millions, it felt like, of Liverpool fans were just like, absolutely not. Jurgen Klopp is everything to Liverpool. And that's because Liverpool are putting the trust in him like they have, and he's brought so much success over the past few seasons. The Liverpool fans still believe that he's the person to do it again, but the job he's facing now is difficult because, like Rafa mentions there, it's the rebuild. It's how much FSG are willing to back him this summer, when they probably haven't backed him enough in terms of transitioning this team into the next team. And that needs to happen, because like Rafa says as well, you're watching a team maybe not capable anymore of playing the Jurgen Klopp way, and he's not going to, he'll make tweaks here and there, but he's not going to change his whole ideology of football, because that's just, I don't think that's what he's going to do, even though, people want different formations and different ways of playing. I think he adapts a lot and will, tweak things. But and again, I think there's some question marks around, maybe there would have been a question mark around his lineup last night had that not come off and Liverpool got a point. And I think against City, he waited till the 70th minute to make 4 changes when the game is already gone. So I think there's definitely points where fans will, poke at and think, is that good enough? But again, this is just a weird season, and I think everyone kind of just wants it to be over already.